coming true. A lot to cover tonight. Let's start with Miguel Almaguer.
Tonight, inside hospitals in the nation's biggest cities.
I myself prepare for every shift like it's war.
And in some of our country's smallest communities, healthcare providers are overrun by a record surge in COVID patients. The coronavirus now spreading faster than at any time in the pandemic. Florida surpassing 300,000 cases, a benchmark already eclipsed by California.
And the sad thing is, it could be avoided if people wore masks.
Now cities like Montgomery, Alabama are being crushed by a tidal wave of patients, also taking the toll on doctors.
It's tough. I get pretty emotional about this.
With 22...
If you really think about it, it's uncharacteristic for doctors and nurses to be working in basically a morgue type atmosphere. Their job primarily is to save life. Their job primarily is to take people that has problems, regardless whether it's cuts or injuries or broken bones, or they need some sort of a treatment, to be able to help these people. And whenever you put these same people in an atmosphere to where nothing but death is surrounding them, it has a bearing on their psychological as well as their mental health, to the point that I have listened to some testimonies of some of these women, some of these nurses, that was probably going to have to seek some sort of psychiatric help because they just couldn't handle the enormity, the gravity of what that they was witnessing and what that they was being a part of. Some of them was frightened. Some of them was shaken, literally shaken. And you could tell that the things that they had experienced and was experiencing was not natural. And it's the same thing as somebody being out on the front lines in the center of a war, a combat zone, towards watching people get desecrated right in front of you, to the point of seeing bullets and bombs blowing up and seeing bodily parts being strode all over the plateau. It has a post-traumatic stress disorder impact up onto these people that have been affected this way. I couldn't even imagine being a surgeon or a doctor or a nurse and having to walk into this atmosphere every day, not knowing how high the death toll was going to be for that day. Because like I said, you're taking them out of their normal characteristic. Their normal characteristic is to save life, help life, not to watch life sit there and dwindle and go away in despair. So yes, this coronavirus that we're witnessing has had more effects other than just death. It's had financial effects, economical effects. It's had psychological effects. It's had spiritual effects. It's had deep, profound meaning in a lot of these people. Let me back up a little bit to where maybe you can understand how profoundly that this could be. Let's say that you have a elder living in the home, and your bills is just right up there to the max towards a monthly to month living for paycheck to paycheck for paycheck. And you're a daughter-in-law, or you're a grandson, or you're a daughter or a mother taking care of a father or a mother. You still have that guarantee that every month that $800, $900, $1,100, $1,200, $1,500, maybe $2,500, maybe even $4,000 a month, depending upon how much money that they made in a lifetime and how much money that they was drawing off of whoever, that you have that as a security. So it's well worth taking care of that person in the regards towards the other person is solely relying upon that money. Well, when these people die, not only are they going to leave that security fund that no longer that they will be available of drawing, that will go down to the daughter-in-law or the son or the daughter or whoever, but they're probably also going to leave an expensive bill. Because most Medicare services that I've looked at only pays, give or take, around 80, 85, 90%. And if you can't cough up the rest of the cash, depending upon how much money that you have in the bank, depending upon how many values that you have pertaining to cars, rings, properties, whatever, the hospital gives them legal leadway towards being able to go in and second mortgage all that stuff, or not second mortgage all that stuff, but foreclose on all that stuff. I don't even think that's the right word. They have a right to go in and attach that property, regardless whether it's a nice car, 4 cars, 5 cars, jewelry, diamonds, pearls, dividends, CDs, whatever. So whenever a person dies, it's taken away a lot of times that cornerstone of that person's life. That other person that's a carekeeper for that person. And usually most carekeepers are usually nieces, cousins, sons, daughters, granddaughters, grandsons, daughter-in-laws, son-in-laws, whatever. Most of the time it's family oriented. Sometimes it's a mixed bag towards having just a good friend or whatever come in and basically be a carekeeper for that person. But usually it has a profound effect. They're not just losing a loved one. They are losing a way of life. That security will no longer be there. And that is what is making it so profound towards these doctors and these nurses that are working in this type of atmospheres, realizes that it's not necessarily just one death, but it could be a possible of multiple deaths out of that one death. Because now that same person that was relying upon that person's income is now basically going to become homeless. They can't afford the utilities in that big house. They can't afford the insurance on that big house. They can't afford other things that they was adjusted to because they no longer have that security. This is affecting people's lives from A to Z. And it's not affecting them in a good type way. Even the people that live through this, okay, are still going to be left with an expensive account. Those that either work or don't work, regardless whether they're retired or disabled, it is leaving a mess behind. And I'm just afraid that with a society that has balanced itself so I almost used the word sharply. I really don't know what the word is that I want to use. A society that has balanced its budget right down to the wire, pertaining to whether or not we can pay this bill this month or we don't get to pay this bill next month, based upon whether or not we still have that income. Whenever you have a society that is teeter-tottering this closely to destruction, that's exactly what you'll see. And this is the part that people like Donald Trump and other rich people and wealthy people don't understand. Because if you're already set as far as not having to worry about big expensive bills, you don't have to worry. But if something like this all of a sudden gets thrown into the clinker, the same people that wasn't worrying now are going to have to worry. And these people have not become adjusted to this type of pressure, to this type of anxiety, and because of it, it's causing chaos across the board. Across the board.
2 states setting daily records for new cases this month. Tonight there's a push to mandate face masks in public, despite resistance or outright defiance. Today, Walmart announcing customers will be required to use face coverings by next week. The growing number of companies joining an expanding list of states. As the CDC chief says, masks could halt the virus outbreak in 4 to 6 weeks.
We're not going to be mask shamers.
Last week, Oklahoma's governor said he would not mandate face masks. Today, he confirmed he's become the first governor to catch the virus. So did Dr. Daniel Lewis, infected in March while attending a hospital meeting about COVID in Tennessee.
It's scary at age 42 to be recording voice memos on your phone that your children could hopefully have if you don't come back out of the hospital.
With several regions struggling to expand testing, in Utah, a nursing home patient died while waiting in a vehicle for one. Now more states are re-implementing restrictions on crowd sizes and closures.
In one of the nation's worst epicenters, Los Angeles, the city is nearly shut down, and it could get worse, says the mayor.
Next year's Rose Parade in Pasadena is now canceled amid health concerns, while Ellis and Liberty Islands, a symbol of America, began phase 1 of reopening. Tonight, progress and setbacks for a nation struggling to contain an out-of-control virus. Miguel Almaguer, NBC News, Los Angeles.
I'm Kristen Dahlgren. Across the country tonight, the pictures of what school will look like this fall, vastly different. Houston, the nation's 7th largest district, today saying it will delay its start until September 8th and keep classes online the first 6 weeks.
We might need to change or turn on a dime, and we've been doing that. We have plan A through Z.
Atlanta announcing it will be virtual for the first 9 weeks.
We have to think of our teachers. We have to think of our cafeteria workers. And then so many parents across this country are in a situation like I'm in. It's grandma who's at home waiting for the kids.
Philadelphia opting for a combo of in-person and digital learning.
My main nightmare is being a super spreader.
In Richmond, Virginia, online classes will continue until at least January.
We know by making this choice that there are families and children who are going to face enormous hardship.
While South Carolina's governor is leaving it up to parents.
Each district must allow the parents to make that choice for their children.
Today, the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine suggested schools prioritize reopening, especially for children in grades K through 5 and students with special needs. The study recommending precautions, but warning districts should be prepared for future closures.
We've purchased plenty of PPE. We have
Austin, Texas is now stockpiling protective gear, including 3.2 million masks and thousands of cases of hand sanitizer. While some New Jersey schools are considering hanging clear plastic shower curtains as dividers, balancing safety and in-person learning with decisions that could change again even before the fall. Kristen Dahlgren, NBC News.
And we've got more breaking news tonight about one of the leading potential vaccines being developed at Oxford University. For that, let's bring in Dr. John Torres. Dr. John, what's being reported tonight?
Lester, promising news this week on the race to develop a COVID vaccine. Early results we've been waiting for from researchers at Oxford will be published next week in the journal Lancet. What we'll be looking for is to see if this vaccine could offer double defense against the virus, meaning it doesn't just boost antibodies for COVID, but also T cells, which are those important helper cells. When both are boosted together, it provides potentially years of immunity, meaning people won't need to get regular booster vaccines. The U.S. biotech company Moderna posted their phase 1 results yesterday. Both of these promising vaccines have been fast-tracked to the next phase of clinical trials and production. Lester?
We'll take any hopeful news you've got, Dr. John. Thanks very much. And Dr. Anthony Fauci is firing back after a member of President Trump's inner circle made a stinging attack on the nation's top doctor involved in the COVID-19 pandemic. Our Jeff Bennett has late details.
President Trump tonight distancing himself from his top advisor, Peter Navarro, who wrote a scathing takedown of Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Well, he made a statement representing himself. He shouldn't be doing that. No, I have a very good relationship with Anthony.
Navarro, who doesn't have a health background, wrote an op-ed published in USA Today questioning Fauci's expertise. Dr. Anthony Fauci has a good bedside manner with the public, but he has been wrong about everything I have interacted with him on. A White House spokesperson today said the op-ed didn't go through normal White House clearance processes. But there's little doubt Navarro's broadside reflects the president's own frustration with Fauci.
Dr. Fauci's a nice man, but he's made a lot of mistakes.
Fauci's warnings about the pandemic often conflicting with the president's push to reopen the country. Navarro's criticism is the most direct assault on Fauci's credibility to date, following a sustained White House effort to sideline him. A top Trump aide posting a cartoon mocking Fauci. The White House providing a document to reporters aimed at damaging his reputation.
Back up a little bit.
Sideline him. A top Trump aide.
Now, isn't this a way of showing our appreciation towards somebody, first of all, that don't have to be doing what he's doing, that has stepped up to the plate in becoming an advisor pertaining to this coronavirus? I don't know what they're paying him, but it's not worth being criticized and ridiculed like you're some sort of political leader. This guy's not a political leader. He's not running for office. He don't want office jobs. He's a doctor. He's a scientist. And for people to be putting out stuff like this, I think it's pretty darn cold. Because it just shows the human mentality of the American citizens towards how far we're willing to go towards blaming people for stuff that we shouldn't be blaming. What's more, we're dealing with something that only occurs every 100 years. There wasn't a whole lot of medical documentation over the last 100-year Spanish flu pandemic that hit due to the fact that they just didn't keep records back then like they do today. There is some records of various pandemics that's happened even since then that people chart more of. But the fact of the matter is we're dealing with uncharted territory here, and to think that people are so callous and cold that they're willing to attack the messenger just because the messenger may have messed up one day, or the messenger was pressured, strong-armed by the president towards having to say something that he probably shouldn't have compromised on, but he said it anyway to kind of help please the individual that was standing within 3 or 4 feet of him, maybe 6 feet of him, on the same stage. People don't understand that we're dealing with something here that is superficial. We're dealing with something here that is not normal or common. We're dealing with something here that is devastating people's lives. You know, I just got through seeing a while ago where it was talking about a possible tornado watch between now and 9 o'clock in this area. I guess because of a cold front or whatever coming down from the St. Louis area down this way in northwest Tennessee. You know, if you get your house blown away and your car blown away and you're still living, even if you have to go to low housing income, or even if you have to do whatever, you can always start back and rebuild. Most people's got some bit of insurance, and you always got Red Cross, and you always got different types of non-denominational contributors out there that will help, including churches. But whenever a person dies, game over. towards help. All your financial resources that you was banking on has now just come to naught. And the very house that you was living in, you and Grandma, or you and Grandpa, or you and Aunt Judy, or you and Cousin Toonie, or whoever, you're not going to be able to self-sustain towards living in that home any longer. Besides that, once they pass away, you may not even be allowed to live in that home. But the financial funds will no longer be there. So it's this, whenever one person dies, it's not just affecting one person. It could possibly be affecting a whole variety of things. It could be affecting a mama papa business pertaining to a farm or some other little mama papa business. It has a ripple effect that will affect people's lives sometimes 2 or 3 generations afterwards. If a tornado comes and blows your house down and you survive, odds are you can always rebuild and start back over. When this coronavirus hits a loved one, especially a loved one that you were solely dependent upon, and now you're left in the wings towards do or die, sink or swim, there's going to be a lot of people that's going to sink. A lot of people, because of one element in their life that now suddenly got taken out of their life. People don't understand. That's the reason why we're seeing all this anger that's ushering out of this people that's not only protesting, but people that's lashing out at one another, because we don't have a stable government that is securing these people's lives that are being torn. If we had a true positive government that could offer some sort of resources or some sort of solution after these occurrences take place in these individuals' life, maybe they wouldn't be so damn mad. Maybe they wouldn't be out there shooting and killing one another. Maybe they wouldn't be devouring themselves in the black market community as far as selling drugs and selling prostitution and selling and doing whatever. But because we have a failed government, because the politicians that's involved in the government have failed us, this is the results of it. Now we're starting to see the true pudding up underneath the cream. Now we're beginning to understand where the rubber meets the road. Now we're being able to see through the stained glass mirrors and the smoked glass towards just exactly what's happening here. And of course, if you'll compound it with the internet, social media, and some of the dysfunctional police departments that has dysfunctional people working in these departments, whenever you have all these elements that have suddenly come together, just as Winston Churchill said about the Civil War, it's one of the most unpreventable events that he had ever studied in regard to the Civil War. And I'm beginning to wonder the same thing today about the chaos and the hurt and the harm and the mayhem and the anarchy that we're now starting to see the developments of, the patterns of, that it's one of the most unpreventable events that the American people in the world is fixing to have to experience. It's not just here. It's in Mexico. It's in South America. It's in India. It's in China. It's in Australia. It's in other parts of the world. It's not just here. Now it's gone over into the Syria region, over where all the refugees are, over towards that area in the Middle East. So if we don't realign and come together as a society. We have the elements. We have the formula of an unsustainable society right in front of our very eyes. If we do not come together towards figuring out these problems that are occurring in people's lives, regardless whether it be our young children going to school, regardless whether it be grandma or grandpa that recently just died, or a great uncle or a great aunt, or regardless whether it be the hurricanes or the tornadoes or the fires or the floods or the famines or etc., etc. If we don't work out our problems, as Winston Churchill said about the Civil War, it may very well be one of the most unpreventable elements that we all are fixing to have to face, regardless whether we like it or not, and regardless how rich or how poor we are. Because eventually this is going to reek up the totem pole to the point that it's going to affect some of the richest people. It's coming near a neighborhood near you. Just like whenever the shortage of the toilet paper first hit, I heard people griping and arguing and complaining about that I don't think that I have ever in my entire life heard complain, not one utter word. But whenever that hit, pertaining to the toilet paper issue, I literally seen old women and old men and decent people. I seen the ugly side come out of them. Let me just say that. I seen the ugly side come out of some of these people that I never would have thought would have used a vulgar word in their entire lives. That's what this is going to do to all of us. It will either humble us or harden us. I pray to God that it will humble us. We need to be humbled as a society, and we need to start to figure out why are the things happening that are happening. How come we don't have safeguards? How come we have massive school shootings and idiots that kick out windows and spray bomb 40 or 50 or 60 people in Las Vegas just for the hell of it? What has caused this? What has infiltrated into people's minds and people's hearts that has perverted people in this type of atmosphere? It all goes back to God. It all goes back to either doing the right thing or the wrong thing. It all goes back to what has been generated through Hollywood that has basically programmed all of us, that has basically contaminated all of us in where we are right now. That's the reason why God is speaking to the 7 churches in the first 4 chapters of Revelations. He who have not known the depths of Satan, hold fast till I come. And it also goes on and says, he who shall overcometh, he who shall overcometh, he who shall overcometh. Overcome what? Overcome this plague that has befallen upon the planet, that now people are becoming aware of. This pandemic, this sickness. And there's thousands of ways that a person can be sick other than just being hit by COVID-19. COVID-19 is just a cherry on top. We was already a sick nation before this ever hit. We was sick in our actions. We was sick the way that we treated our veterans. We was sick the way that we treated our elderly. We was sick the way that we would spend more money on ball games than we would in nursing homes. We was already a sick society. Already a sick society. And if you don't believe me, look at this. Read that for yourself. Slander, degrading, dehumanizing. This man right here has went out of his way to listen to the BS that's come out of the White House in the past 4 months since this pandemic has hit, he has went out of his way to satisfy old big Uncle Sam here. You know, that's Donald Trump, symbolically speaking. And Donald Trump wants to lie to the American people and lead us down this road of deception. Why, the doctor is trying, the good doctor is trying to, you know, he's being pulled in the middle towards trying to satisfy everybody. He's trying to satisfy the political. If I'm not mistaken, this doctor loaded up his suitcase and was fixing to walk out about a month and a half ago because of all this pressure. This could do him in. This could do him in. And to be quite honest with you, if I was this doctor and I had stuck my neck out the way that he had stuck my neck out for the American people, and they don't show their appreciation no more than they're showing their appreciation towards coming up with garbage like this right here, I'd probably pack my suitcase too, doctor. I'd probably pack my suitcase too and say, you know what? You can't help people that aren't willing to help themselves. And you can't help people that are this disrespectful, and you can't help people that are steadily attacking the hand that's trying to feed them. That's the very thing that I've been dealing with now for 30 plus years. You try to help people and they bite your hand off. Well, that's exactly what the Heavenly Father feels like that is happening to him. And that's the reason why that he's quit blessing this great nation the way that he's quit blessing this great nation, and he's allowed for Satan just to come in and wreak havoc upon to society in one form or the other, is because God is tired of his hand being bit off. I'm struggling myself in trying to overcome the wickedness of this world in different areas that are unimaginable at the age of 59 towards what I'm having to deal with this diabetes medication that I'm having to take, and being overweight, and me having these broken ankles, these old injuries, and also dealing with other things that is causing me to lose footing sometimes in my righteous walk with Christ. But I'm still hanging in there. I'm still hanging in there. I still have air in my lungs as of right now. Now in the morning I may die in my sleep. And if I do, thank God for it. Because to be quite honest with you, I'm like the good doctor. I've had enough of it. I've had enough of it. Enough of the disrespect. Enough of the backbiting. Enough of the backstabbing. I've had enough of people not appreciating the things that the Windmill Ministries has embarked upon in the past 30 plus years. I've had enough of it. And if God was to allow for a tornado to hit and desecrate this whole place, or allow for me to die in my sleep, or get the coronavirus and become deathly sick and die, to be quite honest with you, it would actually be a blessing. It would be a blessing. Now, are these the things that I want? Not actually, no. These aren't the things that I want. What I want is to be prosperous and to grow and to help lead people out of the darkness and to tell people about a living, risen Savior by the name of Jesus Christ, and to see peace and utopia. That's what I want. But you know, you can want in one hand and poo-poo in the other and see which one fills up the quickest. And once you realize that the hand that you're poo-pooing in is filling up a whole lot quicker than the hand that you're hoping in, you kind of get tired of hoping. It's like, you know what, it ain't doing no good to hope no more, because this hand ain't going to fill up. We're living in a perverted, sick society. And I know people get tired of hearing that. But until we're willing to face our demons and face the facts and come out of this state of denial, we're never going to be able to wipe our plates clean. We're never going to be able to start all over again towards the way that God intended for a righteous people to live for the maker of this universe. So please, as you listen to the rest of this story, realize that these devastations that are happening in people's lives are real. They are real. There's nothing short about the realness of these consequences that are happening to people's lives.
Posting a cartoon mocking Fauci. The White House providing a document to reporters aimed at damaging his reputation. Fauci today calling the behavior bizarre.
I cannot figure out in my wildest dreams why they would want to do that. But I mean, I think they realize now that that was not a...
Because they got to have a whipping post. They got to have somebody else to blame. And they're not going to blame each other. They're not going to blame themselves. This blame game started with Adam and Eve whenever Adam blamed Eve and then Eve blamed the devil. Nobody wants to be accountable for their mistakes. As far as I'm concerned, this man hasn't made no mistakes. Not intentional mistakes. He may have made some ignorant mistakes, which once more, we're dealing with something that's evolving. We're dealing with something that's changing on a day-to-day platform. We're dealing with something that we hadn't had to deal with over 100 years. We're dealing with economics. You know, back 100 years ago, whenever all this stuff hit, people wasn't near as educated as they are now. People wasn't near as in debt and dependent upon the government as they are now. We didn't have road structures. We didn't have all these cars. We didn't have all this stuff like we do now. People were struggling 100 years ago in the early 1900s. That's just about the time that the automobile had first been created and was coming out. A lot of people in 1918, whenever the pandemic hit, didn't even have electricity. They were still getting around on horse and buggies out in the countrysides. They were still living the old life towards the word of mouth. They didn't have telephones, or if they did, they wasn't in the country life. People were still communicating by old type methods. People need to wake up, and they need to quit being so hateful and mean, because we have no one to blame for these impurities that's happening in our lives other than ourselves, and that includes me. That includes me pertaining to this diabetes problem that I'm fighting right now, pertaining to the obesity. I realized I was poisoned. I realized I was forced to take a drug because of Judge Woodall in Trigg County, Kentucky. I realized that was mandated and forced upon me, but at the same time, I also realized that I really haven't been trying to cut back. I have in some ways, but in other ways I haven't. So naturally, because of it, I'm going to continue to gain weight. And because I'm gaining weight, my diabetes problem is going to continue to haunt me more and more and more. And it's something that I'm struggling with. It's something that I'm going to have to wrap my mind around, because I went through such of a brutal war in 2017. It literally took the wind out of my sail to the point that I was laying in bed, not even wanting to get up and go to the bathroom or do anything of the above, because I was so depressed, until I finally got that telephone call out of Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, expressing to me about a system that the welfare system had generated pertaining to silver sneakers that they was willing to pay for if I would just get off my rear end and go to the YMCA. Up until then, I was dying. I was dying physically, emotionally, psychologically. I was dying. I was dying in a pool of depression. At least now, I've picked my bootstraps up a little bit. No, the problems that's occurred in my life isn't going to be solved instantaneously overnight, because they didn't occur overnight. It took a period of years or months or whatever for me to get in this state, and it's going to take a while for me to readjust. It takes a while for the soul to heal. It takes a while for the mind to heal. It takes a while for the body to heal. I still have the ump. I still have the gun ho. And that right there means a lot for somebody that has went through as much as I've went through and still has the gun ho. Because most people don't even have the gun ho. And once you lose the gun ho, then you're basically out. You're out. It's just a matter of time before the elements is going to take over and you'll basically die. Because you already died mentally. If you've died mentally, it's just a matter of time before you die emotionally and you die physically. You have to keep the mind strong. If the mind isn't strong, the rest of the body isn't going to remain strong. At least God has gifted me to the point that He's gifted me with a strong mind. I still remember things that occurred verbatim on days and when I was 3 years old or 4 years old. I can still tell you exactly where I was and when I was, and can prove the most of it. Can prove it with documentation. Can prove it. I don't just get up here and get to talking. I'm just not, because the Bible says to be accountable for every word, every iota, every word I'll be accountable for.
Prudent thing to do because it's only reflecting negatively on them.
And saving a few choice words for his latest White House detractor.
I can't explain Peter Navarro. He's in a world by himself, so I don't even want to go there.
Meantime, a new NBC News Wall...
Seeing the doctor's trying to be nice. He's trying to be nice, but at the same time, he's trying to be honest about how that these people in the White House are basically just in a world of their own. And I'm pretty sure he probably feels the exact same way about Donald Trump, but he's probably... I ain't going to use the word scared, but cautious not to step on the chief and commander's toes that way, because if he was, he probably would be seeking employment elsewhere. And that may be what the doctor's ultimately going to have to do to begin with, just to get these clowns off his back. We have a society that's eating its own right now, and this is not the time for that.
Journal poll finds Joe Biden with an 11-point national lead over President Trump, with 7 in 10 voters saying the country is on the wrong track, and majorities disapproving of the president's handling of the coronavirus and race relations. Lester?
Been on the wrong track. Been on the wrong track ever since December. We're leading into January of 2020 this year, whenever the stuff come up about Donald Trump pertaining to the Ukrainian all the Ukrainian stuff. And whenever Congress done what they done, I said right then, you've just opened the door for misery and sorrow and for the judgment of God to fall upon this great nation. And sure enough, was my words ever correct in what Congress done? I mean, whenever we have a Tennessee representative that acknowledges that what Donald Trump done was wrong, but it wasn't wrong enough to impeach him, yeah, you have nothing but a sham going on up in the White House. And that's the exact same thing that went on during Nixon era, but at least Nixon had enough dignity, or his party, his administration had enough dignity about them that they wasn't going to go down this way. They walked away from the fight. They said, you know what? We can maybe, we can't save our jobs, we can't save ourselves, but maybe we can save our dignity. And at least those people walked away from something that they know that they should have walked away from. This bunch ain't going to walk away. They just keep getting deeper and deeper, keep digging their hole deeper and deeper every day pertaining to this administration. I've never seen nothing like it. That's the crazy part about it. And I'm talking about literal insanity.
All right, Jeff Bennett at the White House, thank you. And just breaking, Twitter says it's investigating the apparent hacking of many high-profile users, including Joe Biden. Pete Williams is following all of it. Pete.
Here we go again. Unprotected by our government. Unprotected. Having people that's being hacked. Jeez.
What do we know right now?
Well, Lester, the accounts include those belonging to Biden, Barack Obama, Kanye West, Microsoft founder Bill Gates, and entrepreneur Elon Musk. The messages coming from the victims' accounts promised the recipients that their money would be doubled if they sent an amount in bitcoins to a specific place. Several hundred people appear to have responded, sending in tens of thousands of dollars. In a statement tonight, Twitter says it's aware of a security incident impacting accounts, is investigating and taking steps to fix it, and will update everybody shortly. Twitter says tonight that users may be unable to tweet while it investigates, Lester.
All right, Pete Williams, thanks. In Minneapolis, the family of George Floyd sued that city today over his death in police custody as NBC News viewed unreleased body cam video that sheds new light on what happened before that encounter turned deadly. Here's Gabe Gutierrez.
I can breathe. Almost 2 months since the eyewitness video sparked a global movement. Today, for the first time, previously unreleased police body camera footage showed that George Floyd told officers at least 28 times that he couldn't breathe.
My God. 28 different times this man was begging. And it was ignored. Boy, oh boy, if that don't top the cake. If that don't top the cake.
Authorities aren't releasing the videos, but allow the public to view them.
What we see are the interactions between George Floyd and those officers. We hear the tone in their voices, and you hear the fear that George Floyd had initially, and the frustration that the officers had.
In the video, rookie officer Thomas Lane and his partner respond to a call about someone using an alleged fake $20 bill at a Minneapolis convenience store.
An alleged counterfeit $20 bill. This is the reason why we need to do away with the money, folks. We need to go to something else besides the American dollar bill. Once more, I'm not a politician. No, I don't think. No, I know that enacting the Mark 666 is not the answer. But we're going to have to put our heads together and wrap our minds around this problem, because the black underground market is only growing and intensifying. And if the truth be known, the black underground movement is now more powerful or stronger than our very government. That's the reason why the government cannot provide assistance to all these problems. People just don't get it. They're abusing the system to the point that the system is now broke. That's why my brother and I put up this cross, the broken cross, the cross representing the system of that day, the way that they handled lawbreakers during Jesus's reign 2,000 years ago. Their system was set up to where they crucified some of the harshest criminals that was lawbreakers back then. Today, they have evolved to electric chairs, and I think now they do use tear gas, or they use some sort of a cocktail towards giving people a shot or syringe that basically just makes their heart explode, poison them to death, basically. They use a different method today rather than cutting people's heads off or hanging them. But the fact of the matter is, that is the system. The government is the system. And the government is not just supposed to bring penalty to the lawbreakers, but the government is supposed to protect those who are not the lawbreakers. The government is supposed to provide assistance to those who have worked all of their lives that deserve to be protected. We can't even get protected anymore from our own law. We can't get protected anymore from being hacked. We can't get protected anymore. Oh my God. Do I need to explain myself any further? The system has broken itself down because of too many crooks, too many extortionists, too many people have taken out of the cookie jar, and now there ain't no cookies left in the cookie jar. And now the rich don't want to come off of none of the money that they have profited off of the taxpayers, and now they're leaving it to the taxpayers to figure out towards what to do. In the meantime, it creates a cesspool of nothing but chaos, anarchy. Once more, this man's life was taken over an alleged counterfeit $20 bill. Think about that for a second. This man had a wife, and he had children, he had aunts, he had nieces, he had cousins, he had a family. And now this man is dead. Now this man is dead.
When the officers arrive, they're directed to Floyd in his car. As Lane approaches, he orders Floyd to show his hands and then draws his gun. Then, as officers struggle to get him into a squad car, Floyd says he's claustrophobic. Once he's restrained, Floyd says, "They're going to kill me." Former officer Derek Chauvin, who pressed his knee on Floyd's neck, says it takes a heck of a lot of oxygen to say that. Chauvin is now charged with second-degree murder and manslaughter. While he's not commented publicly,
should be charged with first-degree murder, no questions asked. First degree, if that crime that he committed does not deserve first-degree murder charge, not only does he deserve a first-degree murder charge, but he deserves a first-degree murder rap. If that don't deserve to be categorized as first-degree, I don't think that there's nothing else. He premeditated from the time that he had that man down on the ground, because he has training. He knows what that technique is going to do. It would have been different if it would have been a scuffle between two people and it was gross negligence upon somebody's part to the point that he hit somebody and it caused an artery to bust, or maybe caused him to fall into a heart attack or something like that, or a stroke. This man sat right there and strangled this man to death. It wouldn't have been no different if they would have taken a rope and thrown it around a limb and hung this guy. An intentional murder. He should be charged with first degree, and everybody around there that was watching it pertaining to the cops should be charged with second or third degree, because they was a part of it and they could have stopped it. They could have prevented it.
Publicly, in a court filing this week, his attorney objected to a gag order a judge recently imposed and suggested that his alleged actions were justifiable in the line of his duties as a Minneapolis police officer.
Wow. Just by that judge saying that could actually stem of more rioting and protest up in that city. Just because that judge said that. Just the mere pure fact that the dirty is taking care of the dirty, birds of a feather flock together, the rich take care of the rich, the system takes care of the system, I could go on and on, the corrupt takes care of the corrupt. Even Jesus said that sinners love sinners, sinners take care of sinners' problems, sinners watch out for sinners' backs, sinners, are in cahoots with each other, they're thicker than thieves. Come on, look at this. Look at this. How crazy can you get?
According to another court filing, Officer Lane felt that Floyd might have been having a medical emergency. He asked whether Floyd should be turned over on his side. Chauvin says he should stay put. At one point, Floyd says, "Mama, I love you. Tell my kids I love them. I'm dead." Today, his family filed a civil lawsuit against the police department and the city of Minneapolis.
We seek to make it financially prohibited that the police won't wrongfully kill marginalized people.
Today, the Minneapolis city attorney called Floyd's death a tragedy and said the city was reviewing the lawsuit. Lester?
Ian Gutierrez tonight, thanks. In 60 seconds, the double threat, the dire new warning about COVID-19 and the coming flu season, plus the other epidemic. Businesses devastated, many shutting down for good.
Add some resistance. Before it's all said and done with, this is going to wind up being our 1929 Great Depression. Because if you really think about it, what led into the 1929 Depression? It was the 1918.
How about that?
The 1918 pandemic that stirred up everything, that upset the apple cart, that caused a lot of farmers to go belly up, to cause a lot of people to get sick and die. A lot of business people couldn't handle their affairs. And one thing led to another from 1918 to 1919 to 1920 to 1922 to 1927, 28, and then of course the 1929 Depression. So there was already great struggles, untold peril that was going on before the actual 1929 Depression. And I guarantee you, the way that things are set up today, it's not going to take no 10 years to feel the repercussions of this towards another 1929 Depression. This is coming on strong, long, and hard. And if people are not preparing for this, either psychologically or financially or emotionally, they have a rude awakening coming to them, because one thing affects another thing. Forever action is a reaction, and what we're seeing is devastation.
Pandemic combined with the coming flu season, and that it might lead to a very high death toll. The fear is that many Americans won't get the flu vaccine. Tom Costello tonight with facts over fear.
In a typical year, the seasonal flu can be a silent killer, most often targeting the elderly. But this past February, 16-year-old Katie Giovanello was homesick and suddenly went into cardiac arrest.
I did not think that this would kill her.
In hindsight, Katie's symptoms also sound like COVID.
The infection in her chest, the inability to breathe, the way that it affected her brain, the infection, the septic.
This past flu season killed between 24 and 60,000 people in the U.S. Now, the CDC director warns another flu season like that, as the COVID death toll is expected to climb over 200,000 this fall, could make the coming winter especially deadly.
I think those two respiratory pathogens hitting us at the same time do have the potential to stress our health system.
The concern, many people may not get their flu shots this fall, skeptical of vaccines, working from home rather than offices where they normally get their flu shots, perhaps avoiding doctor's offices and not getting their kids vaccinated.
Our hospitals are full, so coming, the fall, knowing that we're going to experience a rise in hospital admissions due to the flu, it's very, very concerning that we won't have the resources to take care of people.
Dr. Adrian Burrows is a family practitioner in Orlando. Flu shots, he says, won't protect you from COVID, but could still be a lifesaver.
If you were infected with either strain of the flu, you could, on top of that, get a COVID-19 infection, which would be catastrophic for your immune system.
Potentially deadly?
Absolutely.
Katie Giovanello never got a flu shot last year.
I wish I was more educated on the flu. I wish I would have known to take it extremely seriously.
Doctors warn it can be difficult to differentiate between COVID and flu symptoms. All the more reason for the entire family to get their flu shots. The CDC recommends September or October. Lester?
An important reminder, Tom, thanks. As some states and cities close back up again, it's wreaking havoc on small businesses, many fearing they won't survive a second shutdown. Here's Jolene Kent.
When Cindy Ramsey reopened her Los Angeles skincare business after 3.5 months of closure, she was ready.
I jumped through every hoop of compliance,
gathering all of my equipment, my personal protection equipment, my hospital grade sanitation supplies.
But after being back open for only 15 days, taking just 30% of her usual customers for safety reasons, California's governor ordered all salons to close up for the second time.
I should be able to apply for approval and say, I need an inspector to come, check out my space, look at my record, and allow me to stay open.
According to Yelp, of all closures due to COVID-19, 44% are permanent. Hardest hit, the beauty industry, retail, and restaurants.
It's an emotional roller coaster. You're up and down.
In Lubbock, Texas, Nick Mascari just said goodbye to his dream, the sports bar he opened 10 years ago. After surviving on a PPP loan and to-go orders, reopening at limited capacity was promising, till the Texas governor shut down bars again last month. Mascari says he had no choice. He's closed permanently, laying off 30 employees.
We're a big sports bar, and a sports bar with no sports. And
see, what you're listening to is just one business owner pertaining to one business that now has affected 30 employees. Out of those 30 employees, there's probably 10 people that's going to be affected by each employee. Everybody's scrambling right now because whenever you lose a business, those same 30 people are going to have to find a job somewhere, because I'm sure they have wives, they have children, they have obligations, they was committed to bills, electric bills, insurance bills, telephone bills, HBO bills, hospital bills, school bills. I could go on and on and on. So one thing affects another thing. Something else I wanted to make mention of that probably people hadn't thought of versus 100 years ago. 100 years ago, my great-great-grandfather, my second great-grandfather, had a little store over here called Penn Store, and him and his wife was doing the best that they could for the survival of the neighborhood. They was selling groceries, they were selling eggs, they was selling squirrels, they was selling coffee, they was selling flour, they was selling tobacco, they was selling gunpowder, they was selling guns. He was selling even a few drugs at that time, because at that time you could sell drugs and not be a licensed pharmacist, because Uncle Sam hadn't got his hands in that industry yet. Okay? Also, his wife was a midwife. She would go out here to different places and deliver children for basically free. And whenever I say free, you can go back 100 years ago, in the early 1900s. Some of the doctors in some of the bigger cities was making salaries at that time. But by and large, your country doctors working in your country settings only got that in which what was considered, this is the best I got, doc. Here's $2 or here's $5. Some of them would even settle for 2 of your best chickens, or maybe a goat, or maybe a horse. It was a bartering system based upon friendship, to where one hand helped wash another hand. That was their survival tactics back then, and that's the way that they made it through the 1918 pandemic. If we as a society don't realize towards doing the same thing, the way that Uncle Sam has set this system up, to the point that if you go to the hospital, you wind up with a $10,000 bill that you can't pay, and then the hospital winds up foreclosing on your property, or they take over your cars, or they take over this, or they take over that. It's an endless vicious cycle, to where it's a dominoes effect, to where one thing affects another thing, and another thing affects another thing. And trust me, it's not going to take no 10 years to get to a 1929 depression. The way that we're heading right now, instead of it taking 10 years, it may not take but about 10 months to hit rock bottom on this. because that's exactly where we're heading right now with all these troubles. My grandfather held a lot of these families up in this community because people didn't have the money at the time to even pay their taxes, much less pay their groceries. And my grandfather would go ahead and loan them this flour or this sugar, or sell them this or sell them that on credit. And a lot of them couldn't pay their credit, and because they couldn't pay their credit, it basically drug my grandfather down. And he was considered a predominant man in this area 100 years ago in running a limb store. One thing affects another thing. Back then, they didn't have hospitalizations. They didn't have big hospitals. They barely had doctors. And those that was usually in your bigger cities. Most people that was being born in somewhere around 1918, even up till probably the 20s, most people in your country settings was still being born in houses. I had a cousin that got born in a house just right up the road here, and he's basically about 72, 74 years old. Jerry Madison, he got born in this house right up here. So you figure he got born somewhere around the World War II era. 47, 48, somewhere along in there. Well, because this is a country setting, which is usually 10 years behind everybody else. Rather than him go, at that time, Martin did have a hospital, or Union City did have a hospital. Rather than them go up there and go to the hospital, they went ahead and just done it the old-fashioned way. They brought in a midwife, and my aunt had her son. You know what it costed? 2 of your fattest chickens, or a goat. Things was operating different than what they're operating today. People didn't rely upon the government like they do today. This is going to have a profound effect economically upon to the world. And if people ain't realizing that and making adjustments to that, they're fools. Because it's coming, and it's coming near a neighborhood near you. I don't care how many Trumps get on TV and try to convince you that we're on top and everything's hunky-dory. It may be in his little world, in his little vacuum, in his little solar system, it may be hunky-dory, but it ain't for the majority of us down here that's struggling already before this thing ever hit.
Not allowed to be able to hang out in the place. It just doesn't fit the model.
Back in Los Angeles, Ramsey is in the same boat.
Will you be able to survive another shutdown like this? No, not at all. If they keep me locked down as long as the last one was, I'm going to lose my business. And that is just the straight facts.
She also tells me she feels her business is collateral damage in this pandemic. Her message, wear a mask when you're out in public so everyone can get back to work again. Lester?
All right, Jolene Kent, thank you. Up next, the growing list of COVID-19 symptoms and the red flag for our own correspondent.
My money should work as hard as...
We're going to leave it right there. I know I come on to my viewers as sounding like the bad news barrier. Buddy, I wish just the very opposite. I wish that we was back up huffing and puffing, and that our jobs was going and blowing, and that our economy was doing well, and that everything was going according to what it was before all this hit, long about December or January or February of 2020. But obviously things aren't that way, and I'm not going to lie to my viewers, and I'm not going to mislead my viewers, because I'm going to be just as vocal and as honest with them as I would be if I was sitting here right now talking to my son or some of my closest, dearest friends. I'm not going to lie to my viewers in regards to the problems that I can foresee that is happening. And if I'm putting too much into it, then please forgive me. But I'd rather somebody be vocal. That way I could go into this thing with both eyes open rather than go into it blindsided. I'd rather somebody be a little bit vocal like myself, and maybe I have miscalculated just a little bit towards the severity of all this. I'd rather somebody be like me and do a overkill on the problems than somebody like Trump that leaves everybody bewildered, blindsided, to the point that you don't know what to do, and the next thing you know, a hardship has fallen upon your life, and you sure enough get caught with your pants down, or you get caught without knowing what to do or how to do it. It's a saying. Don't take it literally. It's figuratively speaking. Metaphorically, you get caught with your pants down. It's a saying that you got caught unexpectedly in something that you wasn't expected to get caught up into. Please take these things serious. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. Take these things serious that's going on, because it's only going to gravitate and get worse before it gets better. Especially if we're not smart enough to pull together and to unify in these problems. Thanks again, and good luck to all of us. Coming from the Windmill Ministries, and Shalom.